Hello from my side, here from Innsbruck, Austria. I'm speaking to you. Thank you very much for the invitation to that event, also for the introduction to my person. So therefore, I don't have to introduce myself anymore any longer. I just want to give you some short introduction into the importance of the entrepreneurship education for teachers and teacher education. As Alex already has told in the introduction, I'm also one part of this PIETE project, which mainly is being presented and discussed today in that event. And out from that project work, I also will present some of my reflections and thoughts now. I just want to start with a very short story. Here in Austria, we have a so-called Educator of the Year award. That means every year, 1 or 2 teachers are being awarded with this entrepreneurship award for their special skills, for their attitude, for specific methods, whatever is the reason for their awarded. And then they are being asked what is their motivation. And once there was that one person who was being awarded, and well, then she admitted how skeptical she was in the very beginning. I have here this quote, and I want to start with that. Well, when it started at our school with entrepreneurship, I didn't know what to do with it at all. I just thought, oh my God, another new thing. And anyway, do we really need this? Well, this was one of those awarded persons. It was a female teacher. And after admitting that, she said, well, after that first confrontation with that term that she perhaps even did not know exactly what it meant to her, then she worked with it and she tried different things out, and more she found out, well, actually it works, and the pupils, they grow, and suddenly also the teaching itself became much more easier. And if that experience she had would have been told to her in advance from her colleagues, for instance, then she just would have said, what a nonsense. I think that's a good framing for what we are talking here for entrepreneurship and especially entrepreneurship education. It's a topic which might be for some people still in the very beginning, a very new field, and they perhaps do not know exactly what they should do with that and how to use it and how to implement it. And that's one of the main goals in our project. So therefore, why it is important, I think the first point which we have to see is entrepreneurship needs to be understood as a broader concept. So one aim of our project is that we have to share that meaning, which for a lot of people, teachers, practitioners, still is not so much transparent and obvious, that we have to share with them a meaning of entrepreneurship education, which is, well, applicable for all of us. And that means teaching entrepreneurship as a very broad concept, not as a specific skill. So it's not just about, being a specific person or being a specific attitude or just building a startup. The conception of entrepreneurship to which we are referring in our project, and which then also will be presented in the event today in more detail after, is a much more broader concept which contains a lot of different competences on different levels of competences. And as such a broad concept, that entrepreneurship is, as also Alex already has mentioned, a key competence for the lifelong learning. But still one could ask, well, isn't there a defining focus, a core of all of those different competences? Yes, I guess the focus idea behind it is it's about generating values. That means to have the ability, of course, to spot those opportunities, to have those ideas, and then also to have the ability to transform these ideas into values. This generating values is, I think, the core. But, and now that's important, it's not only about economic values. It might be also social values, cultural values. So here we have that very broad and therefore also for the social science, very important understanding of entrepreneurship. It's not only about the economy, it's about the society itself. That's the first point, which I think is very important, that we understand entrepreneurship in that broad sense and therefore also acknowledge its social importance. Now, the second point I want to add here is entrepreneurship education now in the education. And here also Alex said, well, it's the teacher stupid. Perhaps you know that slogan, I think it was Bill Clinton, he once used it in his election. Well, I think entrepreneurship education already has been studied and done a lot of research on the school level. So there are a lot of strategies, methods, activities, what to do on school level. Here in Austria, I just know it, but I also know from other countries as well that it is already a well-established topic on school level. It's not so much established on the teacher education level. So how to teach entrepreneurship to those people who then themselves should teach it to the pupils. So therefore, our project tries to stress that importance for entrepreneurship education on that other level. And as we know from research, the teachers are key for successful learning. So if teachers have the competence, the motivation, the attitude, then they can mobilize and influence much more in the learning process than any other factors in school, be it resources, be it the topic itself, and so on. So it's mainly the teachers which are the important factor for successful learning. A third point, which I also want to add here, if we manage that teachers also are entrepreneurial educators in that broad sense, that we also might manage to influence the public image of teachers, which in some countries sometimes might be not always the best. Sometimes it might be a conservative image or also a state-driven or bureaucratic image. So I think also that is a chance and opportunity. My final slide. Now I've just introduced the main idea of entrepreneurship education and introduced the level where it is important in our project. And now I want to go a little bit more concrete. What exactly do we want to change? Well, the one point is that we want to change from sociology, I've got the term, the mental infrastructures. So not the material infrastructures out there, but the infrastructures in our heads. That means the way how we perceive and how we think about what goes on there. And so one of the objectives in our project, but also beyond, is to change the perceptions and opinions of teachers about entrepreneurship, not just seeing it as something only reduced to economic affairs, but also as something which is relevant for all the other affairs too. So that's the one point, I would say the soft goal, changing the way how people think about it. The second more practical goal is, of course, changing the way how that topics could also be integrated in curricula and into specific modules, and then again, how they could apply it in specific methods. So it's all about the classroom orchestration in which entrepreneurship education therefore should also be integrated. And the third level, of course, which also is important question in our project, but also in the research, is what are the different strategies to integrate entrepreneurship into the whole educational system. That might start in the governments themselves, having educational strategies, but it also is about school boards, it is about curricula, the schools themselves, the teachers, the methods, so all the various stages which we have, which are influential in the educational system, they should be reflected about their capacities for entrepreneurship education. A final point. So what might be then the outcome for society? Again, I already mentioned that entrepreneurship, understood in that broad sense, is always relevant and important for a lot of different social topics and realms. Of course, I think it's also well understood and clear that in a globalized age, where there's a high interdependency of people, of nations, but also of production processes, that of course here entrepreneurship itself becomes a very relevant competence. But in the terms of, as I've discussed it before, when we think of entrepreneurship just as a basic competence of generating values, I think then we also could give to the young people, to the pupils, the basic competence that they experience some joy in doing something, in trying to have an influence on the world outside and also to change it. Of course, that sounds quite pathetic, but I think that's a basic goal behind it, the empowerment of young people. And in the end, if we go from the individual to the more collective level, again, in the end, that's also something which makes society strong in terms of their resilience, because it fosters their competence and it also fosters their capacities to live, not only to protect themselves from any crisis like we have right now, but also to live with them in a much more competent way. So I think also there on that level that that relevance and importance of entrepreneurship and its education is very well given.